I am Todd Vinson. Welcome to Base Camp Wisdom, a podcast with people who've weathered the storms, traveled the hard miles, and made it to the other side. In this podcast, we're going to explore life lessons, valuable insights, proven tools and experiences that will help guide you on your own leadership journey. So grab your cup of coffee, sit back and listen to some seasoned Sherpas who've not just weathered the storms, but they've made it to the other side. Welcome to Base Camp Wisdom. Hi, Todd Vinson here from Base Camp Wisdom. I'm excited to have Dr. Kimberling here with me today. Today we're going to talk about burnout and transformation and how we recover well. Dr. Kim, it's good to have you here today. How was your Memorial weekend and what do you have going on?
It was good. Thanks, Todd. It was great. Just had some family time and friend time, and Nancy and I had some time, and so saw Mission Impossible, which just if you like Mission Impossible, it was great.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. It's on my list. I've gotten some thumbs up. I've got thumbs down. I've got some wait and watch it at home.
I know, and I think it's one you want to see on the big screen, just with all the stuff that happened. So yeah, I thought it was good. You know, I love that kind of movie. A lot of action. 2.5 hours flies by because something's always happening. So that was one of the fun things over the weekend. But yeah, it's been good.
Well, I'll have to maybe go check that out Thursday night. So that's
there you go.
What I wanted to talk to on this episode was just talking about emotional, spiritual, and the psychological journey of burnout and what's the path to transformation. And when you're in it, you don't know if there's a path forward. But I want to talk about what leads men to burnout, how to recognize it, and then what it means to recover in a healthy, graceful way and not just piling on and working a little harder and thinking that you have
absolutely
a different result. So a quick intro, we just kind of hopped in and started talking, but tell me a little about yourself, your background, and kind of your area that you work in.
Sure. I've been a Christian counselor for over 40 years now. Was in the business world for 12 years and then went back to school, get my degrees, and been counseling, been a Christian counselor. Love that. Then we launched Awesome Marriage, which is an online virtual marriage ministry. We reach people around the world. Our reach now is getting close to 4 million. So it's God's really blessed it and grown it. And we do video and audio and podcast and just about anything, we'll do if we want to find people where they are. And sometimes people ask me, well, why would you go there? And I think, well, there's people there that need God's plan for marriage. And so we go wherever we find people. So if it's TikTok, you'll find us on TikTok. If it's whatever it is, we'll go there. Nancy and I've been married for 55 years, and we have 2 kids and 5 grandkids and 1 great grandson who's about 6 months old now. And so we're blessed. Our family lives close to us in Oklahoma City, and we feel very blessed with our lives right now.
Fun season of life, it sounds like.
It is. It's great.
Well, now, since we're talking about how great season of life it is, let's talk about a topic that is not quite so fun for people. Men that are midlife, find themselves burned out.
Yeah.
How does a guy typically get there?
I think we ignore it. A lot of times we kind of run on fumes, and we may do that with years, and maybe we realize or maybe not, or we rationalize it some. Midlife, most of us are juggling a bunch of balls, from careers to family to sometimes that sandwich generation. We got kids and aging parents. You got all that kind of stuff. Marriage sometimes is not what you want it to be. It becomes more of a transactional deal, or we're just kind of existing together rather than I think what God created to be. And so then we keep telling ourselves we can handle this because guys are supposed to handle things, and so we get in trouble. And then it kind of gets to the point of just trying to take care of everybody else, and not take care of ourselves. And most of us do that if you're in a caring profession, or really just anybody. We do that a long time, and we don't really take time to look at what's going on with us. And then all of a sudden you find yourself where just, oh my gosh, this is not good.
Yeah. And you kind of described my life. Excuse me. I was there as well. I've known you for for over 9 years now, and that was the
Yeah.
point that I was at. Work harder. We'll just work harder and we'll just muscle our way through that. And that's not always the case. Harder is
No,
not
and I
always
think
better.
no, and I think as men, that's our natural go-to for a lot of us is to just, well, I'll work through this, or maybe we see a light up in the tunnel. It's not really a light; it's just a warning sign flashing at us, and we don't see it that way.
Yeah, the light we in the tunnel is really our dashboard going, you need to address this. Or
Stop.
what are some of the early warning signs that often get ignored or minimized?
Um, I think just being exhausted and not really, and sleep doesn't fix it, and so you just go, well, you just kind of keep going through that. I think one of the things that I see guys do is a lot of times the people that we love the most love us, and we're kind of irritable with them. We don't find joy in the things that used to energize us. Spiritually, we feel like we're going through the motions. It's just not really happening. And then a lot of times there's physical things and headaches and stomach issues, and muscle tension, and all those kind of things. And always feeling like, okay, I'm always behind. I gotta catch up some way. And we minimize them, uh, because we think, well, everybody's tired or everybody's stressed, but then when these become your normal, and your body, your soul is crying out for help,
Right.
and we don't listen to it well.
Yeah, we a lot of times we'll find some unhealthy coping mechanisms just to mask that, and it's
But
a
yeah,
one-off. And we, like you said, this isn't a isolated event. This is my normal. This is every day. I start feeling it. By Sunday afternoon, I start feeling the pressure and the anxiety.
exactly. And that's how a lot of guys describe it. I'm fine. Friday, the week's over. I do find it good. And got a guy I'm seeing right now about when he wakes up Sunday morning, it's like that hits him again, the
Yeah,
dread, because
yeah.
Sunday should be a day of rest, but not because he's worried about Monday and what's going to, and then I've got to start all over again. And so I think, yeah, we all feel stressed at times. I mean, that doesn't mean that you're headed for burnout, but when it becomes chronic or becomes, hey, this has gone on a long time, and I keep ignoring it, that's when you want the red flag to come up and say,
Yeah,
well,
for me, the
something's wrong here.
emotions, it went from emotions to start feeling a tight chest or feeling like there's electricity going up and down my
Yeah.
arms or to the point that it's dry heaves. And that's how I would start my morning in the shower. But yet still, I'm thinking, looking back, why would I minimize that? Oh, well, you know what? We'll just work through this. And the symptoms got
Yeah.
more intense, more intense, and more intense. And I wouldn't talk to anybody, and it just got worse. That's
And
a
I think
pretty unhealthy way to cope. It's just like,
but
well,
we ignore the warning signs. Yeah, we do, or we just justify it, and I think as guys, we don't want to admit that we're down or depressed.
yeah,
We don't do that well. I think it's getting better. I think there's been enough stuff out there and enough people admitting they've gone through depression, things like that, that it's not maybe where it was 20 years ago. But still, guys don't do that well for the most part.
and so what do you see typically as unhealthy coping mechanisms as that burnout is coming to the surface?
I think I think I think alcohol, drugs, fantasy, pornography, emotional affairs, spending money, buying things you can't afford because it feels good to have that boat in your driveway that you can't afford to put gas in, but it looks good in the driveway. And then just becoming withdrawn sometimes. Sometimes some people just withdraw. They're not emotionally available to their family, the people important to them, and they're physically there, but emotionally they're not there. And I think sometimes that withdrawal can be, and then I think other guys try to control everything. So okay, I feel out of control, but I'm going to control everything that's around me,
Right.
and so neither one of those works. Becoming passive and withdrawn, or trying to control everything, none of those work. And so some of them are probably have more fallout than others or affect others more. Certainly, if you become an alcoholic or you're having an affair, things like that, into pornography. Excuse me, I caught what you had.
I know that. Sorry, I gave it to
That,
you. Well, there's two ditches on that same road. I think for me, what went under the radar was I just worked harder, and that's
yeah,
socially acceptable. And I say it's even celebrated, but the damage is just the same as all the other categories that you just described.
yeah, it's And I think we do. We figure out some way to try to get through it and cope, and we don't stop a lot of times to realize is this healthy or not? And most of the time, we choose the unhealthy
Yeah.
to
What would you
start with,
say
at
when a
least.
guy finally comes to some self awareness? What's the first step he should take
Well, I
when
think,
he's in the middle of burnout?
yeah, I think one, I think just acknowledging that you're having burnout. That hey, something's wrong here. There's something going on with us, and so we've got to do something about it. And so it's that I think it's just like, hey, you got to admit you got a problem, and to start with, and then begin the process of okay, what do we do? What do we do to heal? How did I get there? What are the steps I need to take? Those kind of things.
Yeah, it is the AA type thing. It's like, yeah, once I realize and admit that I've got a problem, I mean, that is huge. For me, it was I've talked with you about this, it was my Hello Kitty blanket moment. And that wasn't a
Yeah.
metaphor. I literally wound up wrapped up in my daughter's Hello Kitty blanket in the floor and thought I was dying of a heart attack. So I ignored it. I ignored it for such a long time that my body finally caught up with me. And it was a rude awakening on how I had to address it. So sometimes it may be a gentle nudge and a tap on the shoulder, but it's like holding that beach ball under the water in the pool. Eventually, it's going to pop out somewhere, and usually it's inconvenient
Yeah.
in the wrong place. And
Well, and I think,
that's what happened to me.
yeah, and I think too, as guys, sometimes though, admitting we can't fix this because we are problem solvers. We're used to trying to fix things, but burnout you can't fix. It's not a problem that you can be solved. It's a condition. You've got to go through the process to heal through that. And so you've got to say, okay, what am I going to do? What am I doing wrong? And how do I get out of this hole that I've
What do
dug
you hear
in?
from guys once they're there? What are some of the feelings or emotions that they're experiencing that just keeps them stuck or feeling defeated?
I think just that whole deal of not, I think we get our identity usually from what we're doing.
Hmm.
People compliment, most of the guys that I see that have that kind of an issue going on, it is like that their whole identity is tied up in what they do. And people around them are telling us you're great. Oh my gosh, how great you are, all that kind of stuff. You do so much. And so it's like it scares us that what do you do if you're not able to perform? What do you
Right,
do?
right.
What happens to that identity you've got? And then I think shame can be a part of it. You tell yourself you're not enough, you're failing people. Now you can't do the things you do. If I was a real man, I wouldn't struggle like this. And then I think kind of that shame prevent all that stuff that goes on sometimes prevents us from getting help, taking that first step to get help. And so I think it goes back to that whole deal that feeling that our worth is earned rather than and what we do rather than it's who we are in Christ. And so
Yeah.
once my identity becomes that, then I don't receive what Christ has for me because I've got to do it all out here on my own. And then I think sometimes as we begin to look at it, there's some deeper wounds and hurts that we've never dealt with. That maybe we're kind of afraid to deal with that. It's like, what happens if this surfaces? I mean, I'm already struggling. What if I really go there? Then things that we may have buried, and may be real aware of that, and sometimes we're not. We just know there's something there that's not right, and that's
Right. We've
continuing
got
to
the
affect
awareness that
us,
we've
and has
fallen in
over
the
and over.
hole. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think for me, it's like I
exactly.
fell in the hole and look up, and I just saw the ladder being taken up out of the hole, and okay, my gosh. So, man, I'm here, and I don't feel like there's any way out. So talk to me about some healthy expectations for that road to recovery once you're there and you realize there's some things that I'm not dealing with that need to be addressed.
I think it's not a quick fix, and I think that's hard for us as guys anyway, because we would like to, and that's I think why we go to escape into some of the really unhealthy things. It's a quick fix for a moment, not permanently, not healthy usually. But so I think it's giving yourself permission to heal slowly,
Hmm.
and I think just knowing your relationship with God. God isn't mad at you. He's not waiting for you to get it all together before you can come to Him. And so I think that's important because you don't want the shame won't heal you. If you need to take medication, to know that that's okay. that doesn't mean that you're weak in some way. It just means your body's not reacting the way it's designed to, and the medication can help. I think the other thing we've got to look at is sometimes it's so hard for us to rest without feeling guilty about it. How can I,
Absolutely.
or I've got to justify it to other people. I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
I went home and took a nap, or I did this, to take care of myself. And then you feel like you failed because you did that. I think the bottom line for me is realizing that God does love you, and he loves you in the midst of this thing you're going through. And burnout doesn't disqualify. I think sometimes we have a hard time finding God there, but that doesn't disqualify you from him. He still loves you. And I think
Right.
it may be that encounter you have with him in those times that can be really meaningful and deep if we let ourselves go there. And
Right. We've heard
so
about
I
the
think,
darkest night of the soul. And so how do you embrace that? Because embrace it is really the last thing that you want to do.
no, exactly. And so I think you got to know that it's going to take 1 to 2 years at least for most people. Sometimes it's longer than that. And it doesn't mean you're going to be miserable the whole time. If somebody's listening today and they're thinking, man, I should do that. Oh my gosh. No, but it takes time to go through and build new, healthy, sustainable rhythms, getting to the root issue, those kind of things. And I think the fact too that you're going to have good days and bad days. You may have 2 or 3 good days and you think, well, I'm fixed, and then all of a sudden you have these 2 or 3 bad days and feel like you're back at square one, which you're really not. Healing's not linear, and I think we want it to be that way. If I'm good today, I should be better tomorrow, and the day after I should that much be better. And when you're going through something like this, you're going to take some steps back at times, and that's okay.
Yeah.
It's
And
okay.
I keep remembering you telling me that I really wanted you just to give me a Z-Pack, and in 4 days I would be well. And you're going, Todd, you didn't get here overnight. I mean, this was a 30-year journey. And so it's going to take time, and you've got to extend some grace to yourself and have some realistic expectations,
Right.
and don't dominate yourself with the same patterns that got you here. The patterns that got you here are not going to be the patterns that get you out.
No, no, no. And I think you're learning new skills. You're learning how to say no. You're learning how to set boundaries. You're learning how to rest and not feel guilty about it. You're learning about your emotions. I think for a lot of us, and I was there for a long time, I had 3 emotions: happy, sad, and mad, and that was it. And I didn't
And they all look
understand
the
that
same
behind.
on the outside.
Oh yeah, and so if I'm mad, to think that I might be hurt, and that's why I'm mad, or I might feel rejected, and that's why I'm showing anger. To be able, you've got to get through that to realize, okay, what's behind your anger? What's causing that anger? Because we go to anger because it's safe. We feel so
Right.
much more in control when we're angry, and
It's
so
familiar.
learning so many things that we want to learn to do different. And then how to just receive love, God's love, other people's love, and to know that someone can love you for who you are, not what you're doing. Because a lot of times we feel like, well, they do love me because this is what I do for them. What if I didn't do this? Are they going to still love me? And you need to find out that yes, there are people that love you no matter what you do. You don't have to
Right.
perform all the time for them. And most of those things are not taught to us as we grow up. We don't have a class that tells us how to be healthy in those ways and how to keep from having burnout. I mean, and I think a lot of us as guys, when we're driven anyway, well, that's not going to happen to me anyway. I really don't. I think I went through burnout instead of thinking I need to listen because I respect this person. It's like we used to say, well, that's not going to happen to me.
Right.
And so we just kind of move on until we hit that wall at
And it
about
does
60
happen to
miles.
you.
And then you hit it at about 60 miles an hour. And then you find out I'm in this puddle laying at the base of this wall
Yeah.
for sure.
Well, and you hear people talk about all of these, I got to have healthy rhythms, but what does that actually
Yeah.
mean? How do you practice things like Sabbath or rest or solitude or
Yeah.
being in an honest, authentic community that will give you some support long term for your mental, emotional, and spiritual health?
Yeah, I think starting small. You don't want to try, if you try to, I'm going to do all this stuff at once and get well, then you're back in the same pattern that you were in.
Yeah.
You're in that same, I'm going to be perfect in getting out of this. Well, that's what got you burned out in the first place. So you don't want to go there.
Right.
Sleep is so important. A couple of years ago, I read the book, Why We Sleep. It was revolutionary to me because just all the data behind that and how important it is for us to get sleep. And that's not revolutionary. You hear people say that all the time, but the way God made our bodies, we're supposed to sleep. And a lot of times, when you hear somebody brag, and maybe there are people that can exist on 4 hours sleep a night. I'm not one of them.
Me
But if
either.
you hear somebody
A lot
bragging
of
that,
us.
you just sit there and wait till they hit the wall because you just can't do that. And just some basic things you're doing too of just, how do you eat lunch? Are you eating it standing up? Are you eating dinner standing up, or
We're
or
not
or
eating it at
as you
all.
drive through, or not eating it, or going through some drive through where you're putting something in your body that's not good? Because we know that exercise, good sleep, and eating right all help depression. And so when you're in depression, just those three things alone, the way God wired us, are going to help you. And knowing that your time with God needs to look different. It needs to not be rushed. It not need to be performance driven. I can think of, I had a quiet time and thinking, well, I did pretty good today, God. That was a pretty good quiet time I gave you. No, that's not it.
Or I got on
It's
U
really,
version and I did 5 of them. It's like, well, no, you kind of miss the point. Do one of them and slow down.
yeah. And I think having a Sabbath, to me, that has been a game changer just in my life of having a day. And for me, it is Sunday. I set aside things. I don't go to my computer. I don't look at email. I don't do anything like that. I just enjoy family, enjoy just sometimes just sitting outside, enjoying that, and knowing that if God had a day of rest, I mean, why do we think we don't need it? You know? I mean,
Right.
you're talking about the creator of the universe, and I think that's very purposeful why in Genesis he said on the seventh day he rested, because we're supposed to rest. And so I think when we don't do that, and I think learning to just be comfortable with yourself and God, just 15 minutes. Try 15 minutes where you're just sitting quietly, no phone, no music, no plan. Just open yourself to God and just be there
Yeah.
and just give him time to just see what he does. Because I think he's going to show up. And I think it's awkward for us. I
Yeah.
remember first time my pastor said, challenged us to do 5 minutes a day quietly, and just thinking, this is the longest 5 minutes of my entire life. But once you embrace it and get used to it, it's like, wow, that 5 minutes just flew by because God was, the way you were doing things. And I think too, that you need community. And I think you need to find one or two people that you trust as a guy that you can know your story, and that you guys can like meet for coffee
Mhm.
or lunch once a week, every 2 weeks, some kind of consistency in that. And not just where you go, how's it going? And then you talk about the latest basketball or football game, but
Right.
how's your relationship with God? What did God teach you since we met last? What are you struggling with? Somebody loves you enough to ask you the tough questions. You can always find guys that sit around and talk football and basketball and baseball with you.
Stocks or economy or politics. So,
Whatever.
yes.
Yeah, you can find that, but not someone that you can just say that you really can get deep with, and you can say, I was making some progress, and I've kind of regressed back into some of my old habits, and someone that can help hold you accountable for that.
When I thought that when we slow down enough, then we can start talking about identity and, what is our calling and our purpose. But I think a lot of that gets covered up in the first half of life as we're just striving for a career.
Yes. It's our culture is not great to us. I remember the first time we went to Europe, and we had two or three restaurants in this place in Italy, this town in Italy we wanted to go to.
Excuse me.
All three of them were closed for a holiday. Can you imagine a restaurant here closing for 2 weeks to a month and then just opening back up? It was like, these people know something we don't. At first I was upset, not upset, but
Sure.
just, disappointed. I really kind of wanted to,
Came all
uh,
the way here and you're closed for the
yeah,
holiday?
and they're closed. But it really had an impression on me of, I think other cultures do a lot better with things like that than we do, of giving
Really?
yourself permission to rest and not worrying about, oh my gosh, nobody's going to come if I close down for 2 weeks. And
And if we're
yeah,
suffering burnout and an anxiety and the twin brother depression that comes along with the anxiety,
yep,
those things were disruptive to our well-being. And so I've got to have something equally as disrupting if I'm going to experience some peace and not just
right,
recover, but have some transformation.
yeah. People
If
I
not
know that,
transformation, I'm just getting coaching,
yeah,
but
you're
really my
right.
lifestyle, my habits haven't changed.
And I like that I hear some of the people talking about that. Carrie Newhoff is a friend, has a great podcast, and Carrie hit the wall, hit burnout. I can't remember how many years ago, but he talks a lot about the new rhythms, and he takes a nap every day. I don't know that until probably the last 5 or 10 years, I would ever admit that I took a nap. Because, I mean, are you kidding? You just took a nap when you've got all this stuff you need to
You
do?
got a lot to do. Yeah.
Yeah. But know how healthy that is. And I love that he speaks about that you speak about it, because that lets us know, gives us permission. There are things that we need to do for ourselves, or we're not going to recover.
Right.
We're not going to come out of this. And unfortunately, there's people who don't, who just
Well,
don't
my crash and
recover.
burn happened in 2016. And then I repeated it again about 2022. And so
Yeah.
it's been a 9-year journey for me to get to the point that I can truly say I've got some different rhythms. But it took me 30 years to get there. And so the grace piece and slowing down and retooling and doing things different. It took me a long time, but I like what you said. You're not going to all have good days, but how are you trending? Over the long haul, I've trended in a different
Yeah.
direction than I was in 2016.
That's one of the things I think is important that I recommend now. And I can't remember if I did or not, but to journal during that, because you can see your progress, and you may come that day where you think, I haven't gained anything. And then you look back and you go, oh yeah, I am better than I was last month at this time. And so
You
I
can
think
also
that
you can
gives
see
you,
it in your handwriting, your penmanship. Oh, I can feel the stress and the pain and the
yes,
anxiety just even by just looking at my penmanship.
right. And just seeing it improve over time. I can read this. I can't read what I wrote
I
back
can't read
then,
any of that. Like, yeah, that's what I
Yeah.
was feeling on the inside. It was just
Yeah.
pure
A
anxiety.
jumble. Yeah, yeah. So it does take time, and you got to give you permission to do healthy things for sure.
So, what spiritual truths are most helpful, during that recovery, and that be a journey, it be a longer journey,
I th- yeah.
not a
I mean,
quick
I
trip
think
to the grocery store or the pharmacy.
right. I think you got to realize that God loves you not based on what you do for Him. And I think a lot of times, especially if you're in ministry, you justify all the stuff you're doing because I am serving the Lord. Yeah, but he still says take a Sabbath. He still wants time with you alone. So yeah, I see that's where I see guys in ministry really get in trouble, probably with their families and with their marriages, because, well, yeah, I'm not home again for the seventh night in a row, but I'm serving God. I'm out there. I've been leading this group. Nobody else could lead this group but me. We tell ourselves all these lies that are just putting us on that path to the burnout. And I think knowing God loves you because you're his child, not because of how you serve him, not because you've got it all together, but just because you're you and you can't do anything. The first time I heard somebody say you can't do anything more or less to make God love you, make God love you more or less, I thought, wow, that's it. Because I don't know that I always believed that.
Yeah, I
And,
about
and
died trying.
And then, yeah, and then you get to it. And, Jesus says, come to me, all you are weary and heavy laden, I will give you rest. He didn't say, get it together, buddy, and then come
Yeah,
and see me. No, it's like where
yeah,
you are right now, broken, tired, whatever's going on, that. And that I think too, understanding that when we are weak, it's not like we've got this malfunction in God's system. We're not, it's something that just us, and that God's power is made perfect in weakness.
that's
That
counterintuitive to our culture.
it is, and your burnout at this point might be exactly where God wants you to be,
Yeah,
because he loves you that much to say, stop, don't continue on this path. And he's wired our bodies where they finally just say, I can't do this anymore. And you start having symptoms that you think, I never had stuff like that before.
right,
Things you're talking about,
right.
probably even in the shower, and the tenseness, the tightness, all those kind of things, not being able to focus. I think that's a real common one. You're just not focused
I
on
was
anything.
foggy long before COVID came. I had COVID fog, a decade earlier. And I think one of the things I want to ask you about is just distinguishing between burnout and even clinical depression. If you let that go unchecked, even longer.
Yeah, I think they can overlap, obviously. Burnout has triggers like the stress in work or life circumstances, those kind of things. But I think when we see depression in a long-term deal, it's more pervasive. It is that chemical imbalance. But I think if you're asking the question, am I in burnout or am I depressed? You need to just talk to somebody, talk to a professional, figure out what it is. Do I need medication? Do I need counseling? Whatever it is that you look at it. So if you're asking yourself that question, what's the difference in burnout and depression? Talk to somebody that can help you figure it out, because everybody's unique. Your situation was different than somebody else's that would walk in to my office. And so you want to make sure that you know that.
What's the multifaceted approach that you deal with? It's not just, hey, go for a walk. It's not just medication.
I think
if you could give some bullet points on kind of a overall approach,
I
high
think
level, what would you recommend?
Well, I think you want to, once you acknowledge it, then, okay, what are you going to do about it? I think finding a Christian counselor to talk to work with is going to help, because you're going to have somebody that helps you see a different picture or a bigger picture that kind of guides you along that pathway. And so it's beginning to, like I usually will give a depression screener to somebody and say, okay, I really think medication will help you if you're willing to do that. Some people it takes a while to do that. But from my point, if someone is depressed and the burnout, that the an antidepressant makes it easier to process through things, because you kind of got a safety net there. You don't feel like I'm just going to drop off the face of the earth if I talk about this. And so we do that, and then just kind of talking through what's someone's, what's your life like? What have you been doing? What's healthy? What's unhealthy? What do you need to do now to get healthier? How to set boundaries. And how to say no are probably two of the most important things, because I think that gets us in. And when I first started saying no, it bothered me a lot.
Yeah.
It bothered me because after I'd hang up from saying no, that I let that person down. Well, no, you're taking care of yourself and you're choosing, and it's okay to do that.
And I think after I started saying no, I found myself actually being able to sleep better, which then started stacking these other things that you talked about. But it took me finally setting some healthy boundaries and not saying yes to everything.
Yeah, because I think you and I had a lot in common there. I would say yes to something, and when that came around for me to speak or whatever that event was, I dreaded it. I was mad at myself for saying no.
You resent them?
Probably resent them, or resent the guy down the street, whatever. You just think, why did I do that? And so being more selective and knowing that that's okay. And I know I've let some people down, that thought, they probably called thinking, well, I'm sure he's going to say yes. I mean, we've known each other, this or that. And I don't say no to everything. I loved when you asked me to come on your podcast. I was excited about that. Something I wanted to do. And so when I was able to choose the things that I'm going to really enjoy and I'm not burdened down, if I'd said yes to you and 10 other things, I probably wouldn't have been excited about talking this morning as I was, because I've got them hanging on. And so I think just learning to do that is really helpful. And then a counselor that can help you. Are there some old wounds? Are there some things? I always talk about background, growing up, what happened. Sometimes things happen in our childhood that are not, we interpret them different than they are, but we live out like they were what we believe, the negative things, or maybe negative things really happened to you. I've heard so many things that happen to people growing up that are just like, wow, I can't believe somebody said that to you or acted that way towards you or ignored you in that situation, or, those kind of things that happen. So helping understand some of those things and bring healing there, and sometimes reconciliation with someone from the past or not, those kind of things. So I think it's just that process of, and that's why when somebody has burnout, to know that it's going to take time. You hopefully begin to feel healing along there.
Right.
But it does take time to kind of dig through that stuff, and to help somebody. You need the accountability, I think, of a counselor for a while. Certainly someone else can help too, but that you're doing the things you're supposed to do. If you commit to having a Sabbath, then if you commit to going, I'm going to get 8 hours sleep a night, that you're getting 8 hours sleep a night, and just doing some of those things and having accountability, because it's not going to be easy, because you're going to feel guilty and you're going to feel like I'm wasting time. What's the deal when you die when you sleep, or, that's when you catch up in your sleep? Well, No, we need to take
That's
care of
not, yeah.
ourselves as we
I
go
also
through
heard
it.
you say diet and exercise. You were asking me, I'd go out, have you gone for a walk? There was days that I was going on, a couple of walks a day, and I may have not felt awesome, but I never felt bad when I came back from a walk.
Yeah. Yeah, those are some of the things that you're just wired. Yeah, and if you haven't been somebody's listening, hadn't been working out at all, I mean, don't go out and try to run a marathon tomorrow.
Yeah.
Do the
You're
walk.
perpetuating the problem that got you there.
Yeah, I had a guy just started walking the mailbox. Okay, do that. And then get around your block and then, but there's something therapeutic about walking, I
Well, then the
think.
guilt and shame for medication. I mean, you say, Todd, if you had a heart issue, you would not hesitate being on heart medication the rest of your life. That's just part of your routine, and your quality of life is better. So talk a little bit about just
Yeah.
the stigma of being on medication.
Yeah. And I think guys have had that much more than women. Women seem to take care of themselves better than we do. And it's
That's why they
not,
live long. That's yet another
why
reason why
they
they
like,
live longer than men.
yes, yes. But I think knowing that when your body gets off like that and your brain chemistry gets off, basically all that antidepressants do is get your brain chemistry working the way it's supposed to work. And just like, yeah, I told you, if you had a heart problem, you're going to do everything you can to get better. If you've got something else that, if you've got a liver problem and the doctor says you got to quit drinking and you've got to take this medication, hopefully you're going to do those kind of things. So it's the same thing with mental, and it's going to help your progress. It's going to help you come out of your depression. It's going to help you process through things better. Um, and it's okay to do that. I mean, I think God gave us medication. He gave us doctors and researchers that were able to figure out these things. And so there's nothing to be ashamed about taking medication. I mean, you don't have
It
to
really is
post it.
a three-pronged process. It's your physical health, it's your emotional health, and your spiritual health
Right.
that you've got to address.
And you don't have to post it on Facebook that you're taking
No,
an antidepressant. You don't have to tell
no,
anybody, but be willing, if your doctor and your counselor says this is a good idea, either listen to them or quit going to them,
yeah, yeah,
you know,
right.
and it will make a difference for you. And I think there's so many things that as we talk through this today, I was just thinking, Todd, there's so many things of stereotypical things as men in our culture that we buy into that are not healthy for us. But we think we've got to do this, or we've got to be that strong or that tough or whatever, or can't admit we've got a weakness. And then we all have weaknesses. Everybody has weaknesses. Go back in the Bible, everybody has weaknesses. And that's okay. That's because it turns us to our God who has answers for our weaknesses.
Right. And
For
get you to
sure.
a better spot. As you
Yeah.
start feeling progress and you're doing better, what's the risk of returning to normal, so to speak, too soon?
I think going back into the patterns of what got you burned out in the first place. If you just rest enough to go back to the same patterns, you're going to get back in the same place again. You may think,
Yeah.
well, I've rested. I really don't. He said a year and a half, and my counselor says I should still be coming, but I'm doing pretty good right now. And then you just are going to get back in the same patterns. It's too easy to do. Like with you, that was your normal for 30 years. So it's going to go back, even though you knew or had come to understand how unhealthy it was, it still was your normal. And it was probably easier to fall back into that. And so you've got to build this new normal that has the boundaries in it, that gives yourself margin, that gives yourself rest, that has rhythms that are sustainable and healthy for you. And disappointing people that were used to your overfunctioning. I
That
mean,
was
you
my
see the
biggest
guy.
challenge and fear is disappointing other people. And
Yeah.
I did it for 20 years in a nonprofit. Then I went through that journey, and then I replicated again in the coffee industry, starting a coffee company. But each time I wasn't there the second time I wasn't there as long or fell as far because I did fall back in some old patterns, but people around me that surrounded me held me accountable on and helped provide some challenge in a real loving way. Hey, I'm seeing the same patterns that got you here before, and to actually address those and do the work and kind of pump the brakes and not go back to the things that got me there. And that was hard to hear, but I knew where that road was taking me if I didn't get off that path.
Yeah, and I think and you did, and I think that's not abnormal to go through what you want. I would hope people wouldn't, but sometimes because you made a change, your change was you were not doing what you were doing. You're in a different line of work. So with that, it probably made it easier to fall back maybe
Yeah.
into some of that as you're
These are
building a
these patterns
company.
are familiar. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and so you want to avoid that and just not, you gotta have a new normal, and if you don't, you're gonna find yourself in the same spot again,
Yeah.
most likely.
What would you say to the person that is maybe on the other side that knows someone that's dealing with burnout?
Mm.
What's some words of encouragement you could give them as they walk alongside someone that they care about that's in that season of life?
Yeah, I think that don't try to fix them. I mean, for one thing, you cannot fix them. You can walk with them because I don't think like when you're in that situation, if someone offers a solution that you didn't ask for, you're not going to listen to it. You're going to kind of write that person off. And if it's your spouse or people in your family or maybe people at work, don't take their struggle personally. It's not about you that they withdrew or they're doing this. Know that they're struggling. And so I think being present with them, I think text, when I went through depression, Nancy had sent me the last time some text of just thinking about you, how you doing, praying about
Yeah.
you. Those things helped during the
Yeah.
day,
Whether we
because
respond to that person at the moment or not, man, that was helpful.
it helps a lot just to know it's there. Because I think when I went through depression, I mean, really, it was like I went in the office and counseled people every day, but I was whipped by the time I
Yeah.
got home, and I didn't have anything left. So Nancy walked me through that, and she didn't try to fix me, and she understood, and she didn't try to make me to do things she knew I couldn't do at that time. And so I had her walking through it with me. And I think too, knowing that your spouse or whoever's going through this, the healing is not your responsibility. That's God's job. And when your spouse goes to God with that, God will give them the answers that they don't have without him. And sometimes you may think, well, maybe my husband's right. God has given up on him. No, God works a lot of times and you don't see it, but just trust that he's working as you go through those things.
Persevering prayers do accomplish what they do. They do accomplish much, and
They
I would
do.
say that has been the one thing that has given us an awesome marriage. It's because someone walked through those hard miles with me, didn't give up on me, didn't try to fix
Yeah.
me or judge me. There were some times, Jeannie would say, you know what, I'm going to sit here with you, but this is not your new normal. You're not going to be here forever.
Yeah.
And there was time that she brought some challenge that I didn't want to hear. Hey, you're gonna go run errands with me, or you know what, you're gonna take a shower and shave, and you are gonna leave the house today, and you are gonna show up for this because it's your daughter's graduation or this or that. And so it's one thing to sit there for the moment, but also not let you stay there and wallow in it. But
Absolutely.
they are going to show you the path forward. And so you were part of that circle of people, from pastors to my time with you to medical doctors to uh, inner circle of friends that knew me at my best and my worst and still walked through it. It was a combination all those things and the other facets that we talked about today. That was a compilation of all of those. Even Giant with their tools and their
Hmm.
language were some nuts and bolts on how to do that thing to navigate through those things that we've talked about today. I want to thank you for walking through this journey with me and just helping me realize I don't have to be the Lone Ranger and have to
Yeah.
have it all figured out, but you do have to have those people that you can go deep with and be authentic, and
Yeah.
also to be able to see my blind spots and care enough to even share those and walk through that at a pace that I can handle to get unstuck, or you know what, deal with those issues so I'm not stuck anymore, that I can move forward.
Yeah. And I think just the people you mentioned that were there, if someone's going through this, surround yourself with people that love you. Because it's not it takes a village, I guess, but it's your village. You can choose the people who are in that village. But like you did surround yourself with people, and you had a wife that was willing to go through it with you. And if you're a guy and you're struggling with this and your wife doesn't understand, it might be good for her to go to a Christian counselor and to learn how she can best support you and through this, because Jeannie played such a huge part in yours. And I know there are times you probably did not like to hear some of the challenges
No,
she
there's a
gave
lot of
you.
times we were sitting right there together, and it was hard to hear. but it was true, and it was shared in love and concern and care.
Exactly. And those are the things that I think help us get through this and realize that's just not that God has more for you than that. And if you stay stuck in that, you're going to limit what you end up doing for him and for those that you love. And so you don't want to get stuck because there's always a way out and God always has a way out.
Yeah, the transformation on the other side. I mean, she just kept saying, "Oh, this is not our new normal," and I'm going, "Oh, yeah, it is." And that'd be sick to be surrounded by people that believe in you more than you believe in yourself at the time. And that's been huge. And I could rattle off probably a dozen people real quick that were part of that and still are part of that circle in my
Yeah,
life. And so what we want to do is isolate, and that's the very worst thing that we can do. And so taking that step to reach out and, what's the one thing I can do? Not us give them a 7 to 10 step program, but you know what? I just need to connect and have a conversation and be real with someone with either my symptoms or eventually get past the symptoms and what are the things that are driving that.
hmm
I mean, my life is a testimony. There is transformation on the other side, but be patient. Be patient with the
absolutely.
process.
If you're seeing someone go through this, I mean, they really may just need you to sit down by them right now and just say, "Hey, I'm here. Or I'm praying for you," or something like that. I've had people tell me how much that meant, and sometimes I think as a counselor, it's hard for me as a friend of people sometimes to not try to fix them and have
And
to
that's someone with
realize,
a PhD and a master's. You know what? You don't have to have a master's or a PhD to sit down with
no,
someone and just be still and be quiet and
no,
listen.
just be still and be
Yeah.
quiet and listen. And they will tell you at some point how much that meant to them. They may not be able to tell you that day or that time, but it does mean a lot. And it's a step forward to know that somebody cares enough to sit here with me for an hour or whatever
Yeah.
and just sit with me because they
Yeah.
care about me.
Absolutely. Well, what are some upcoming events on things that you've got going on that you're excited about?
Well, also, Mary, we've always got all kinds of new things going. Our podcast is great. We're going to do a series in the fall that's going to be kind of different that I've been wanting to do. It's going to be a series on Fridays and mainly interviewing some people that we're not going to talk about marriage. We're going to talk about more about life in it. And so we've got some great people we haven't released to yet, but that are lined up for that. And then just the way we continue. We have a great team at Awesome Marriage, and it's continue to try to reach people. And so how do we reach them now? How do we reach one generation maybe that's in a little different way than we did a different generation? Because I think now more than ever we need to know God's plan for marriage because we live in a culture that doesn't value it like it used to. So anything to do with that as far as family, I love summer with family. We have a pool where we live, and so grandkids and their friends and stuff coming over is always fun. And it's July. I take more time off, and so I look forward to that.
You're
And
practicing
just
what you preach.
yep, yeah, and you have to do that. And wasn't always as good about doing that. I can remember vacations where I would work part of the vacation with family, and go looking back and thinking that was one of the dumbest things you ever did.
And our wives
And
were
and
telling
so
us that
oh
I got to
yeah,
pay the bills and I got to do this and
right.
that.
And so now it's trying to embrace every moment that we have with each other and with family and friends, and it's great. So we look forward to things together. And we'll take a trip sometime this summer. We haven't decided exactly where yet, but we'll go somewhere, probably a beach. That's kind of like what we do. Because
Yeah.
again, you don't have to do anything. If you go to Europe,
Take a book, you may read it or you may not, but I got it if I want
yeah,
it.
and you don't have to feel like you're going to miss something if you don't go see something today.
Right. Right.
All I want to see is the sand and the water and the food that comes to me, and that
That's
kind of
right.
stuff.
And just recharge
Exactly.
and enjoy your people. What's the
Exactly.
best way to connect with you and your resources? Someone that we're talking to today would like to hear more. What's the best way to contact you?
Somemarriage.com has everything. You can find out about our podcast, everything we do, our classes. We have also Marriage University. We have a lot of classes in there. We have a lot of free resources. And then just Dr. Kim at awesomemarriage.com gets to me. And then we're on all social media and we try to be most places.
Well, I really enjoyed this time here together today, and I really appreciate your friendship, and also your guidance as a seasoned guide, and just sharing some wisdom from your own experience as I've gone through my own journey. So Thanks again for today, and I'll put all your contact info on the link here, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks, Todd. It's been a lot of fun, and I love what God's done in your life and how you're paying it back
Thanks
with
for
what you're
pouring
doing
into
now
me.
to
It's
help
fun paying
others.
it forward when you see the other side.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Kim.
Thanks, Todd.